Hi, lovies. Happy New Year. Happy 2024. It's Christina with Karma's Eye Psychic LLC here on Universal Spirit Podcast, and we are continuing our magic series, our 22 episode series, and this is episode 12, and we're talking about the magic of birdhouses. Just wanted to take a second and say that I am already ready for this beautiful year 2024. I've been on this podcast since 2022, and hopefully, we can get out more exposure. We can get more guests on here because last year's guests were just phenomenal, and I already thanked them for their time and their input on everything. And this year we're expecting to have a lot more guests and also dive into a lot more spiritual subjects that people don't usually talk about, but we are going to talk about it here. So birdhouses have been part of Western culture for hundreds of years in both North America and Europe. Over the centuries, baskets and clay pottery were used as the initial birdhouses in Europe, while birch bark was used in North America. The first use of a man-made birdhouse in history was around the 15th or 16th century in Turkey. Birdhouses were built for sparrows and swallows during the pre-Ottoman period. They were made of bricks, tiles, wood, stone, and mortar. Birdhouses in Turkey were often built into the façade of building and complemented the architecture surrounding it. So the birdhouses would resemble the houses in the neighborhood that it was in. So if you had mansions, then there was a birdhouse mansion. Native American origins: paper, birch tree trunk, birch bark cavity, which could be used to create a birdhouse. Paper, birch, or native to North America. Birch bark cavity, which could be used to create a birdhouse, was the main material used to build birdhouses by Native Americans along the East Coast when the English immigrants arrived in the 18th century. The purpose of these birdhouses was to shelter the birds from the harsh weather and increase the number of birds in the area. Back then, there were very minimum weather regulators. So in order to keep, some of the wildlife alive, they would have to be, housed just like humans were housed. And yes, there was a fact of decline in wildlife during this time. So the Native Americans definitely put into place a way to keep them from becoming extinct. Now, fallen birch trees with a diameter of about 5 to 6 inches would be cut into small sections of about 6 to 8 inches. The heartwood would be removed from the bark by hitting and loosening of the bark. The removed heartwood could be cut in slices, and 2 of these slices could be pushed back into the roll of bark to be the top or the bottom of the birdhouse. A 1 to 2 inch hole that would create, in the bark to all birds to access to the inner cavity. If that was very wordy for you, just pretty much poking a hole in wood so birds can go in and out and, eat. Now, there were some European influences on North American birdhouses. While we normally think of birdhouses as a way to protect nature and increase the amount of birds in the area, that was not always the case. Birdhouses in some places in Europe were used initially as a trap to capture eggs and even birds. These birdhouses were typically made of clay, and they were built like a vase. However, in most cases, birdhouses have been used to protect wild birds from harsh weather and predators, as well as provide a location to live. When the earlier colonists came to Williamsburg, Virginia, they were interested in attracting birds, for pest control. Bird bottles about 8.5 inches long and having an entrance hole of like 4 inches were turned horizontally and mounted on the side of buildings, really just to get them away from the main areas. I do have the link for this information in the story, but I'm pretty sure you're asking, like, what makes them magical, right? Well, in magic, birch is associated with inception, fertility, and sometimes with purification. Birch has a natural antiseptic property. Birch is traditionally used for, the witch bosoms, Beltane fires, and maypoles and Yule logs. Birch in the fire goes in sign of what the lady knows. That's supposed to rhyme, but not really. Goes the traditional Wiccan rhyme. Birch does well in rough, acidic soil and cold climates. So places where larger, deciduous trees could not grow. Although birch appears fragile, it is extremely strong. It's almost like the bamboo of the forest, right? The spirit of birch offers courage and protection to those who would venture outside of the safe zone and the normal cohabiting places. Another use of birch is for protection, especially psychic protection. Birch groves provide shelter for the psychoactive fly agaric mushroom. So birch is also a patron of sorts for hallucinogenic journeyers, right? Where birch is the guardian, the wanderer, it is said to be safe from madness and fairy tricks. Birch has been variously linked to the Norse goddess Frigg, Freya, Induna, and Hel. It is also surely related to the white maidens or the regular forest fairies that haunt the forests of Germanic folklore. That's an interesting thing it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. But the birch spirit is a larger, older being than even these great ladies. Nor does birch easily fit into any one of the Wiccan concepts of the goddess, right? There are so many different ways for birch to be seen and associated with many Wiccan goddesses, with good or with bad intentions, or even with neutral intentions. Birch has the fresh innocence of the maiden, the generosity of the mother, and the silent courage of the crone. It has a deep, long relationship with humans as a provider and a guide. So definitely looked upon to also protect the animals of this planet as well, considering if we were God's, or the universe's most precious creation, that doesn't mean that other creations aren't worthy of survival, love, and shelter, and etc. Especially when you are diving into magic and understanding and being very connected with nature, you would also have to be, just protective of nature, understanding how, it's a life just like you, just like you, and just like your life. Birch brings an abundance of potent positive energy to magic. Invoke the birch spirit for an auspicious start to new ventures. Meditate on birch for resilience during hardships. Incorporate birch into your charms for love, protection, and wisdom. So, did you learn anything in this episode about how birdhouses are magical? Just think about that next time you see one. And now knowing the original intention makes it even more magical. And it's a nice thing to think of when you see people putting up birdhouses, that, it's not only the connection to, nature, it's a connection to the universe and the purpose of protection, the purpose of, caring for another life, having shelter for another living thing. Like we put dogs in houses, right? We put cats in houses, and there are very limited amount of shelters for animals who live in the wild or live outside. So, caves are for, specific animals that a lot of smaller animals cannot dwell with, at least not safely. So they need a place to go too. Yes, trees can be enough, but, with humans having, the intellect that we have and the ability to, make things and design things to help ourselves for our good, that we would take the time to make something for the good of nature. So just let me know what you learned in this episode in particular. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode as we continue this magic series. So I will see you later, lovies, in the next episode. And don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Karma's Eyes Psychic LLC here on Universal Spirit Podcast. Happy New Year, and I will see you soon. Bye.